On this episode of Big Boys Don't Cry, we discuss the 1982 film Cat People. You don't have to have seen the film to enjoy the podcast, but if you do listen without having seen the film, just be aware that there may be plot spoilers. This episode is also sponsored by the Good Comics New Releases 2021 Kickstarter. Some of you might know, some of you might not know that I run a small indie comics publisher, as well as doing this podcast and having a day job and doing a bunch of other things. And we're called Good Comics, and we're fundraising to put out 5 new books next year. We need to raise a lot of money to do that, but it's going to be a really, really good way to do it. So please visit the link in our show notes to check it out if you want to support indie publishing. Right, on with the podcast.
Everybody wants to be a cat, because a cat's the only cat who knows where it's at.
Tell me, everybody's picking up on that feline beat.
I can't do any more because it just goes so well with your smiling face as you lie there in bed.
See, you've done a musical introduction to this episode. I was going to do a musical introduction to this episode as well.
Sorry, you still can.
Seen a film that's bad. Even Bowie couldn't save its ass. That's all I got.
Not bad, not bad. Yeah, I think Bowie would have appreciated that.
I think he would have. But I do love the song Cat People. I think it's one of his best. And it's one of the songs of his that I return to the most, actually, is Cat People. Interesting pre-fact for you before we cover off facts later on in this episode. But it's also used in a film by your favourite director.
Whoever directed Air Bud 7th Inning Fetch.
Yes, exactly. Little known factoid that movie was directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
It
I love the
explains
bit
all
when
of the swearing and violence.
The dog kept saying motherfucker, and then he ran in circles, like biting a kid who was tied up, while a previously obscure but actually quite well-known sort of country song played. Yeah.
That's the entire plot of Seventh Inning Fetch, isn't it? No,
yeah.
Inglourious Bastards uses Cat People, and it uses it to quite good effect. Say what you want about Tarantino, but he's very good at using music effectively in his films.
Yeah, I will give him that, to be fair. Even down to that song with the Japanese song with the riff in Kill Bill, like that is good. I'm willing to admit that is good. I can't remember what that song's called, but it's very good. Yeah,
he's very good at choosing the right moment to put in the right music, really, isn't he?
But it's interesting that he'd choose to use a song like Cat People when it was literally the theme of another film. I guess at this point it doesn't really matter, but I guess he would have been aware of it and would be aware that it would make people think of that film. Does it matter? Probably not.
I don't think so, and I think it is one of those forgotten songs of Bowie because it has been tied up in the odd legal battle in terms of appearing on his best of albums.
Really?
Yeah, so it doesn't appear in all of his best ofs, even though it was at the time relatively popular.
That's weird.
And yeah, so I think it is kind of, and I think the fact that it was made for a movie, potentially for a different label and written by somebody else as well, I think all of that kind of compounded together caused it a little bit too much of a hassle to put it on best of albums. So no, so I think it was like a contribution effort. So it was written by him and an Italian producer called Giorgio Moroder.
Yeah, the guy who did the music for the film.
The father of disco, as he's called.
That is true.
He set up a recording studio that's been used by loads of different people all over the place, and he's done loads of different great soundtrack works.
Yeah, the Moroder Dome, it's called.
It's exactly what it's called. So he's done all sorts over the years, so the two of them wrote Cat People.
Okay.
And it got some number ones. It got some good hits as well. But but yeah, it's not particularly well known in comparison to some of his other hits. I suppose Bowie in the 80s is less refined, I suppose, in the views of his fans, where you think of Bowie as the 70s thing, and when you think of the things of his that stand out from the 80s, it's stuff like Let's Dance.
Yeah. Which is still a very popular song.
Which is amazing. Yeah, I really love it.
You remember my old housemate Aled?
Yes.
His first dance was to Let's Dance.
Oh, that
at
is
his wedding
really nice.
A couple of years ago.
That's lovely. Shout out to Aled.
It was a very good choice.
And yeah, so Bowie, maybe people should revisit the song Cat People, but should they revisit the film Cat People?
Or visit it at all, as in the case of me, who had not seen it before.
Yes, yeah, it's true.
Can I just ask you about Bowie, though? Would you say that you were a big fan?
Yeah, I think I'd say that. I think even when he misses the mark, it's still interesting, and that's something that I really appreciate about his music. So, weirdly enough, my favourite album of his, out of all of the albums that he's released, is probably Outside, which was released in, I think, 1995. And it's a very strange album where it's got elements that are very similar to early Bowie work, and a few bits and pieces that are kind of similar to some of the stuff that he was putting out in the 80s. It was a reunion with Brian Eno after a fair few years apart. But it also includes kind of like 90s rock and 90s electronica elements in it, and it doesn't go to the extent that when he was using jungle music in the album afterwards, which is very weird. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember.
But it's still kind of odd, and there's these weird industrial elements, and it's this kind of concept album. One of the songs was remixed by the Pet Shop Boys to be a single. It's an interesting album, and I really like it. And I also think that actually his last album was incredible as well. So I think all the way through his career he was putting out interesting music, and that's something that I really like about him.
That's exactly right.
He never rested in one place.
No, and I have so much respect and so much time for that, even though I was never a massive fan of his music. There are like 5 or 6 of his songs, a handful of his songs that I think are really good, but I've never been a huge fan. But after he died, I used to think, oh yeah, Bowie, whatever. I used to think he was a bit overrated, and then after he died, I sort of read a lot more about him and listened to a lot more of his working. As you said, came to have that appreciation for how he was never afraid to reinvent himself and do it in really, really interesting ways as well, and was always his own person and always just made the music that he wanted to make, and that the way that he did that was so influential and affected so many people that he really was this towering figure, and I appreciate the hell out of that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I would say, I don't know if you listen to Black Star, but it is incredible. It's a really powerful album. And, it was released, I think it was only 2 days before he died.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was, it's genuinely amazing. And the fact that it was his final album as well just kind of makes it all the more special, I suppose. But yeah, so in this house, we appreciate David Bowie.
Yeah, for sure.
And I love Cat People, the song.
It's good. I had forgotten how it went until it appeared over the credits of this film over the face of a snarling panther.
Where else should a song called Cat People be other than at the beginning with some weird imagery and panthers, or at the end where it's a picture of a very angry panther? It's the only 2 places it should be.
Have you ever seen a panther?
I have seen the movie Cat People, so yes.
I mean, IRL, in real life, in the flesh.
No, I don't tend to go to New Orleans in the 80s where weird cat-human hybrids are running around. So I don't think I've seen one in a zoo.
That seems exactly the kind of place you'd like.
I mean, I would love to, but unfortunately it's quite far away and doesn't exist. So
New Orleans doesn't even have a zoo.
Well, yeah, I mean, a kind of New Orleans where there's magical panther people does not exist. If it did, that's where I would be living and trying to become a panther person. But I don't think I've seen one in a zoo. Have you seen a panther?
No, I just wanted to segue into the fact that my granddad claims he has seen the legendary Surrey puma. You know about the Surrey puma?
That is a Ford Puma that drives around Surrey, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. There's only one.
Yeah.
There's only one allowed at any one time.
Only one, yeah.
Yeah. I know it sounds like a Tory sports team, but it is a real thing. Well, supposedly, the rumours of big cats in Surrey abound, and there was a carcass found recently on a heath in Woking that suggests that the Surrey puma is back. So, if I didn't have a job and a kid and stuff, I'd probably be out there investigating it.
So I've just had a look at this, and the Surrey puma was initially discussed in like the 60s. How long do pumas live for?
I don't know. A long time. But yeah, I think it was the 60s when my granddad claimed to have seen it.
Let's see. Well, I'm just thinking...
He was a young man at the time.
I'm thinking more about the recent carcass found rather than at the time. Apparently they live for 8 to 13 years in the wild. I don't think that the most recent carcass is the work of a puma, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
You don't think the original Surrey puma had kids?
With a different puma that also happened to live in Surrey.
Yeah, Surrey puma family.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe it is a less interesting version of cat people, and there's a couple of incestuous people in Surrey that are secretly puma men, and whenever they have children themselves, they carry on the curse. Spoiler alert for the film Cat People.
That sounds like the kind of thing that happens in Woking in the Pizza Express.
So the movie Cat People is a movie that is a remake of a previous horror movie. Have you ever seen the original Cat People?
No, it's from the 40s, right?
Yes, yeah. So 1942. It's a psychological movie, although there's hints at fantasy elements. That doesn't happen, and instead it's all kind of in someone's head, and it's all about their neuroses and things like that. And it's quite interesting. And I went back and rewatched Cat People, the original, because I hadn't seen it for a fair while. And it still holds up quite well as a movie of its time, and you can see that it is responsible for some interesting elements of horror movies. So it's often reported as being the first jump scare in cinema, and it's an interesting film. And it's interesting watching that, and then watching. I think it's fair to call Cat People 1982 a shit piece.
I don't know about that, actually. Sorry, I was just taking off my headphones because I think there is actually a cat screeching outside my house.
It's heard what
Can
we're
you hear
talking
that?
about. I can't hear anything, no.
Oh, good. It's either a cat or a fox, but there's something screeching out there. Maybe it's the Surrey puma.
Fox people.
Fox people. So you watched the 1942 one as well as the 1982 one for this?
Yeah, I figured I'd put it on just on my lunches this week, just to just to see
nice.
it, because it's been a while since I saw it, and I did remember enjoying it when I first saw it.
I just had a thought that obviously there's 40 years between 1942 and 1982, but 1942 seems impossibly far away from now. That's like our grandparents' era, or like my grandparents were small children and in 1942 even. But we're now, at this moment in time, we're 38 years away from 1982, which is as close as makes no difference to 40 years, right?
So what you're
Isn't that
saying
crazy?
is that in 2 years' time we're going to get another Cat People remake.
Yeah, and we need to make it.
God damn, I'm so excited about this. We want more incest. We want more. We want more tiger goop. We want more.
The tiger goop is weird.
Yeah.
I had no idea what that was supposed to be. It looked a bit like someone had killed a bunch of flies and left them to rot.
So basically what's going on is that this it's not really a genetic thing, but it's not really a fantasy thing. It's kind of this weird hybrid of the two, because you see that the tiger comes out of their skin and then they burst out of, I'm sorry, not tiger, they burst out of the panther skin, and then the the panther bursts out of their skin, and what's left behind is that weird goop, basically. So it's almost like they disintegrate. It's very similar to a technique that was used a few years later in a very, very horrible episode of The X-Files about this genetically mutated serial killer who eats people's livers and then hibernates for 20 years or something.
Oh,
like
lovely.
That.
I am just going to go outside and bang on something because it's definitely a fox that's screeching and it's driving me crazy. You might be able to hear it.
Are you sure it's not Malcolm McDowell?
It might well be, yeah.
Is he just
he's
standing outside?
a fox. Yeah, so just bear with me 2 minutes. Just keep talking.
So whilst Paddy deals with whatever creature is outside, I'm just praying that he does come back and that it's not secretly some kind of horrible creature that's trying to get him. Because this is the scary month. I can hear banging. I'm hoping that is Paddy banging and not the creature outside banging. We will have to find out in a moment. It's just very tense.
Hello, I'm back.
Hello. Is it you or is it the fox person?
Well, who knows? The camera's not turned on, so How would you know if it was me or Malcolm McDowell?
I know he is a very good actor. He could just be impersonating you.
He could play me.
He could. So anyway, right, cat people. I think it's a shit piece, not in terms of it being a bad movie, but in terms of it being a very strange movie. Mainly because they decided to add incest into it, which is really weird. And
so that's not in the 40s film?
No, not at all. The 40s film is about a Romanian woman who travels, or Serbian woman, I can't remember which, and she travels to America and she falls for someone, but she's scared that if she has sex, then she'll turn into a panther.
Right.
And that's basically the plot. And
does she eventually have sex and turn into a panther?
No, she has sex. She doesn't turn into a panther. She dies.
Oh, boring.
Yeah, she thinks it's going to happen, but it doesn't. And in the end, I think she releases a panther from a cage, and then the panther kills her. I think that's what happens at the end. Yeah, so that was a very, very big mistake to do that. But yeah, it's very psychological. It's very low key in that regard, and it's very much more about the sort of psychological aspect of it, about the relationship aspect of it. Whereas here, they're just like from the off, it's hey, you want some creepy incest? Here's some creepy incest.
Hi, I'm your brother. Let me stroke your shoulder.
I'm your brother. Let me stand incredibly close behind you.
God, everyone in this film is standing so close to each other all the time.
They are. It's incredibly awkward. So for our listeners, if you've not seen Cat People, you should watch it, I think, because nothing is like Cat People 1982. It is a very unique movie. I'll leave it to you to decide whether that's a good or bad thing. But basically, Irina Gallier, played by Natasha Kinski, is traveling to meet her or to reunite with her brother. So they were separated when their parents died.
And that whole thread is a bit thin, isn't it?
Yeah. And after time in foster homes and everything like that, they're reunited. However, they are the children of incest, and that's because there is this long-standing something magic or mutant or curse or something. It's never really fully explained, and I'm glad it's not explained. But basically, whenever they have sex, they turn into panthers and eat people. And until they eat someone, they can't become a panther. They can't become a human again. They're stuck in panther form.
Yeah. And they're literally inside the panther's body waiting to burst out, as you find out later on.
Yeah.
Alien style.
In a couple of incredibly horrible and quite effective body horror scenes, actually. The first couple that you see do look a little bit cheap, where it basically looks like Malcolm McDowell's wearing furry mittens.
Yeah.
But then the later ones, it's very horrible, particularly by 1982 standards. I mean, this is pre-Cronenberg at his best. And obviously, when you compare it, I was obviously thinking about The Fly when I was watching these transformation scenes.
Yeah. When was The Fly?
Or John Carpenter's The Thing. So The Fly, I think, was a few years later. But yeah,
Which we talked about a couple of years ago, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah, it was one of our other horror months. So yeah, The Fly was 1986. But you've got a similar kind of tone here in terms of these transformations, where it goes through this half-human element before it goes into full-on panther mode. And they're quite grotesque and effective, I think, those scenes. And they use them very sparingly. This is a movie mainly about the tension and the relationships. And really the most unnerving horror element of this is the incest element, I think. They really play with that taboo in a effective and very horrible way. And sort of you look at the relationships around that. And that's kind of what drives it more so than the scenes where it's panthers eating people, which are used quite sparingly.
Yeah, definitely. So the thing is, right, because you had told me that this was a shit piece, I went into it expecting something really wild, and I didn't get that. So maybe I think it's better than it is because I went in with a certain expectation. But I actually quite enjoyed it, and I quite appreciated it for what it was, which was that it did use the body horror and the gore quite sparingly, and I thought it was very well paced, actually, for a film that falls into the shit piece category. But there were just some things about it that are just so ridiculous, and the threads that just don't really tie up, which is all stuff to do with the kind of the backstory and the setup of it, I think, is where it doesn't really work. So you're just thinking, oh, okay, why not? I'm just going to enjoy it for her turning into a panther. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a shit piece in the best possible way. It's not a shit piece as in it's a bad movie. It's a shit piece in terms of it being very odd and there being moments that are just incredibly bizarre, but it's still being enjoyable. And so when I think of the positives of this movie, I think of the strange imagery, particularly when they're doing those flashback scenes where they're talking to their magic panther tree and things like that. And there's some quite pretty shots scattered in among things, which I think work very effectively. Obviously, the soundtrack is great. I think the performances are good as well. I do enjoy. Oh, yeah. I really enjoy Malcolm McDowell in this.
He is the perfect creep.
Yeah, if you want a man to be an incestuous panther man, who else would you pick than 80s Malcolm McDowell? Quite honestly, he's perfect for this role. But then there's also the real trash elements. So you've got loads of gratuitous nudity in this movie. All of it meant to be titillating to a male audience, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of boobs.
There is an awful lot of bosom in this film, for no real reason whatsoever. And that is quite odd. And it's weird because there's all of those weird, interesting elements, and then you've just got the straight up traditional horror movie trash, and it's this weird binary between the two where it keeps jumping between the two tones almost. Which at least makes it a very interesting watch. So you've got this real psychological element where you're like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder, are they really turning into panthers? Oh, no, yeah, they're definitely turning into panthers. Here's a panther eating somebody. Which is, yeah, and I do enjoy it. I think it's an enjoyable movie to watch, and it's strange enough to actually keep you guessing as to where it's going to go as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it starts off very, very well. Not necessarily with the scene in the ancient times where all you're thinking is, did she have sex with the panther that appeared next to her while she was tied to the tree? But I mean, the initial bits with Natasha Kinski, where she's just going and reconnecting with her brother, and it's all quite slowly drawing out their relationship, and it's immediately very weird. But you're like, well, that could just be because they're reconnecting after they got separated when they were kids and whatever. And then there's her like going out to New Orleans and falling in with the zoo crowd. And then there's the panther attacking someone in the motel and the zookeeper people getting it. All that stuff is quite realistic, and it almost like the scene of the zookeepers coming to get the panther. That's almost like a scene from a comedy, isn't it?
Yeah, where he's smashing out the window to try and shoot it and then nearly falling off the ladder is great. And then the same
and it's
guy,
John Hurd, who you always recognise, but you're never quite sure what from. He's in some baseball films.
He's in everything. He turns up in everything. But this is one of, I suppose,
he's the dad in Home Alone.
Yes, yeah, right. And he's the guy in Big as well, isn't he? He's the other guy in Big.
Yeah.
But he's also
George in Sharknado, lest we forget.
Of course. But I think this is probably one of the films where he's at his most prominent as a character, where he's the main sympathetic character, I suppose, aside from Natasha Kinski, because she doesn't know what's going on. He's kind of the other guy. And then the fact that he's kind of billed as this more sort of human person versus cat people makes the end that much more chilling, which I think, we can talk about the end in a bit. But I think it's a very, very effective finale to this movie. But in between all of these deep elements, there is, here's the other zookeeper guy. Oh, his arm's been ripped off. Oh, that woman whose boobs we saw 5 seconds ago. Oh, her leg's been ripped off. Or no, it was her arm as well, wasn't it? It's another arm that's gone.
It's always arms. They always seem to go for the arms.
Yeah. It's just, it's incredibly, it's got that kind of exploitation feel to it, where it's deliberately playing up the trashy elements. And I think I'm in two minds about whether that's a good thing or not, because there are some really interesting ideas being played with in this movie, and it kind of undermines them. But at the same time, it does make it more fun to watch when there is stupid, violent stuff going on.
I think without that element, you just get a film that was very po-faced and that took itself too seriously. Yeah, and when you've got these kind of like fake-ass panthers wandering around eating people, it just wouldn't work, would it? No,
exactly. And mentioning the fake panthers, I really love how there's those shots of genuine panthers looking very annoyed, and then an obvious puppet, like a tail swishing or a paw coming down. And
I'm sure in 1982, almost 40 years ago, people didn't think anything of it. But, now it looks like a children's TV puppet, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it does show the sort of difference between early 80s and mid to late 80s in terms of those prosthetics. Have
you ever seen Harry Hill on his show used to have a puppet called Stuffer the cat? Have you ever seen it?
I did. Which Harry Hill show are we talking about?
This was when it was like more of a stand-up sketch show. This is pre-TV Burp. I think Stuffer has appeared on TV Burp, but if you Google Harry Hill Stuffer the cat, you'll see what I mean. And he looks a bit like the Panthers here.
I'm going to search for him because I have watched. Oh yeah, the blue cat fella.
Yeah, so obviously the Panthers aren't blue, but there's a quality to the face that is not unlike.
Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, I think it does add a certain quality to it, though. The occasional moments of obvious cheap special effects are of its time, and I think it's enjoyable that they're there. I maybe don't want it to go down the route of impressive special effects as The Fly has or The Thing has, and just having it as very silly, I think kind of works in its favour.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's a silly premise, really, isn't it? With a lot of horror films, I suppose it's things that prey on the darker corners of the mind, or the worries that people have, or those kind of things. I'm not going to be kept up at night worrying that I'm going to turn into a panther if I have sex, am I?
No, you're not.
Maybe you are. I don't know.
I mean, I go to bed dreaming that I'll turn into a panther. That's what I want from life. I want to become the Beast of Bodmin. That's my life goal. But yeah, and I think that's right, is that the main premise of this is not something that's going to get under your skin, if you'll pardon the expression, and instead is the moments that last with you are more sort of like the relationship side of it, isn't it? So they're really trying to play up what if the person that you're with isn't what you think they are, what if they are dangerous, things like that, and that's kind of what this movie really plays into.
Yeah, definitely. But it still feels just quite silly. And that's a good thing. And yeah, also playing with incest as well. It's like, obviously, that's kind of the last taboo, but it's like they go for that just a little bit too much, but they know that they're doing that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing with this film. And so it's interesting when they do sort of call back to the original film. So they don't do that very often, but the scene in the swimming pool is actually almost shot for shot what happens in the original movie, but without the boobs, of course, because the boobs are always added into every scene in this movie. I'm surprised that they didn't add boobs to the Panthers.
Like a sort of Howard the Duck thing, but for Panthers.
Yes, although there is that one little snippet in the transformation scene where her breasts go into the panther body, which is actually incredibly unsettling.
That I thought was quite good effects-wise. That was better than I was expecting for 1982.
Yeah, that transformation scene is very, very good. It's almost like an American Werewolf in London, which again is one of those movies of the era that really played around with those sort of special effects.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Oh, it's very good. It's quite funny, which is nice. It's it's a good movie. As American
What's funnier than
Werewolf
Wolf Boys? Nothing.
Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, but very rarely does it call back to those to the original movie, and I think it's better for it. It's almost as though this movie shouldn't have been called Cat People, although that is the perfect name for it. It's not really tied to the original very much.
It's definitely a misleading name. It makes me imagine. Well, it makes me think of cats. There's no way that cannot evoke cats, especially now in this year of our Lord 2020. But yeah, it makes it sound like a non-musical version of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats with some killing. I expected a lot of prancing. I expected there to be people transforming into cats left, right, and centre, and there to be some kind of... I think cat people as well implies a large number of people, when really you're only talking about two people who turn into panthers.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. You've only got two people. So really it should be called an American Panther in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I suppose it is a bit of a misnomer, isn't it, that it's called Cat People. It does... Obviously, the special effects here are less terrifying than Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats. But yeah, it's an interesting film, I think. I'm glad we revisited it.
Yeah, me too. And I think it's a really good choice for Halloween as well, having just watched what was, a straight up classic gothic horror film. It's a very, very nice sharp move left from that, but still within the sort of horror canon, as it were. And I find it interesting that this film hasn't endured. Like, I don't think it's very well known anymore. I think people are sort of dimly aware of it, but it doesn't necessarily have that kind of the status of people watching it because it's shit either. So it's kind of fallen through the cracks, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's a shame because, the 80s was a great time for horror movies, and I think this deserves revisiting. I think people do need to remember it because I think there's a lot that could be used here. Because
to make a new Cat People.
But to make a new Cat People, or just as inspiration for other movies, because it's, in spite of its silly name and in spite of its sillier moments, there is a slow burn feel to it, which I think could serve quite well. So, I think Ari Aster's Cat People, a 4-hour long
I would go for that.
Would be incredible. And so I think, I think there's scope in here for people to find things that are interesting. And for me, at least, I found the weird flashback Panther scenes almost reminiscent of scenes from Black Panther, the Marvel movie. There's a weird similarity between the way that they're filmed and sort of the effects that are going on.
Fake Panther, as this film should have been called.
Yeah, Fake Panther. But then
Marvel's Fake Panther.
But then you've also got other weird moments where you've got Panther vision when she's chasing that rabbit, where she's left the house with her boyfriend in it, and she spots a rabbit and she's hunting it down. And then there's one of those few very effective horror scenes where he can see her silhouette walking into the room and he turns on the light and she's covered in blood and she smashes the lamp to one side.
He says, "Don't look at me.
Don't look at me. I'm covered in rabbit blood."
I thought, and again, because of the way you described it, I thought there was going to be more ridiculous stuff like Panther Vision. I thought there was going to be a lot more of that and a lot more oh my god, I'm turning into a panther. I thought it was going to be lots of that. And it wasn't that. I like that it focused on the human story.
Yeah, and it is nice. And I think what people will remember about this is like the transformation, and it is the weird incest, and it is Malcolm McDowell perching on a balcony and jumping down with acrobatics. All of those kind of
When the
elements.
first time he just like hops up onto the bed frame like a cat, you're just like, yeah.
Yes,
I like where this is going.
I'm fully on board with this. It's and it's got all of those bits, but really the core of this film is very interesting, even though it is. I'm going to reiterate that I think this is a shit piece because it's so strange.
No, I agree, but I did legitimately enjoy it as a good and entertaining film that I think is competent and well made. And I guess, can it still be a shit piece if it's competent and well made? I guess the answer is yes.
And I think the answer is yes, because we've got Jupiter Ascending as the standout shit piece, don't we?
That's the definition of a shit
exactly.
piece. Yeah.
And that is a competent and well made movie, but it also just has a man with dog ears and jet boots.
It's so good. I think we should rewatch it.
We really should. I think, when's our next special numbered episode?
I think it's 200. We're at 179 now, I think.
Maybe we should do a revisit where we watch a few of our greatest hits from the early days.
That's a good idea.
And we do a bumper special episode where we watch Bridges of Madison County.
Yeah. Yes, we've been talking about that for such a long time.
We watch Jupiter Ascending. I'm not sure what other classics we've got. But yeah, maybe we do that at some point.
Cats.
Oh, Cats. Oh, God. But yeah, maybe we do that for a special episode. But yeah, so I think it's a strange movie. It's got lots of weird stuff happening, but it, like you said, it is competently made. And I mean, what else would you expect from its director, Paul Schrader, who's he's the guy who wrote Taxi Driver, and he wrote First Reformed, and he wrote Raging Bull. You know, this guy has written some incredible works.
And there's a sensibility to this that you can just about connect those dots, can't you?
Yeah. Like I said, that it's really big on that psychological aspect, and there's a lot of tension. And although it's got that kind of, although it's got those stranger moments, a lot of it is very grounded, even though it's a movie about people who turn into cats.
Yeah. I've never seen Raging Bull.
It's about people who turn into bulls.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it like bull people?
Exactly, as bull people. Yeah, a lesser known David Bowie song again, Bull People.
Bull people. Da, 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 da. Bull people, they turn to bulls. That's how it goes.
That's exactly how it goes. But yeah, so I think, yeah, there's a lot to really appreciate about this film, isn't it? And I think, you know, the acting, I think, is very, very solid as well.
Yeah. No one's phoning it in.
No,
I think everyone's taking it just seriously enough, and that's the main thing.
Yeah, and so, you know, they're definitely being a bit playful with it here and there. Malcolm McDowell is, you know, he's as flamboyant and enthusiastic as ever. Malcolm McDowell's one of those people where he's been in some real stinkers, but whatever he's in is entertaining, and it's almost worth watching it just because he's in it. You know, he's in the second he's in the he's in the second Silent Hill movie, Silent Hill being the video game franchise, and it's a very, very bad movie, but he's great in it. And yeah, it's almost, you know, it's almost worth watching anything that he's in. But here he's like you said, he's perfectly cast. Natasha Kinski's great as well.
He's done a lot of video game work. I
He
didn't
has,
realise this.
yeah. He's big on video game voice work. Going back a very long time as well. I think he was in the early Wing Commander games.
Wow.
That yeah, he's always been. He's always been in video games here and there, which is very interesting. Yeah, Wing Commander 3 he is in 1994.
Wow.
which also
Yeah,
has.
I've never seen A Clockwork Orange either.
Have you not? Oh.
No.
Have you read the book Clockwork Orange?
Yes, I read the book a few years ago. I always meant to watch it, I just never got round to it. I thought the book was okay. I wouldn't say it's one of my favourite books, but it's interesting and has a place in the canon.
Yeah, I think you've got all of those different sort of dystopian novels, and Clockwork Orange is a very interesting one because you've got the slang dialect that's being used, and you've got the dictionary at the back to help you translate it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting way to tell the story. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of lacking from the movie, which you'll have to let me know when you watch it, is that obviously you don't have that separation in the same way. So it's something that was very hard to translate. So although the movie is held up as a great work of Kubrick's, it doesn't quite. I don't think it quite has the same impact as the book, which I'm very loath to say because books are for nerds. But
yeah, obviously we don't want to admit that a book is good, but it is a good book.
It is, yeah,
and it's a very, very interesting study of obviously the human proclivity towards violence and how we process that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Much like Cat People, which is all about the same thing.
Yeah, of course, yeah. The human proclivity for turning into panthers.
Precisely. But yeah, you've got Annette O'Toole, who's great in this. John Hurd is really good. Ed Begley gets his arm taken off.
Ed Begley Jr. Love that guy. He's always in the Christopher Guest films.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is how you know someone's good.
And then Frankie Faison, who's in Coming to America. But he's also in Silence of the Lambs. Which is he plays Barney the guard, who is the friendly guard of Hannibal Lecter. And he then appears.
I've never seen that either.
Oh, you've never seen Silence of the Lambs?
No, there are some gaps in my horror canon viewing.
At some point, we'll have to watch that, but not for the podcast because there is very little that can be tied to this podcast for it, unless you think the love between a man and human flesh counts as something that we can cover on Big Boys.
If you can find a film that has cannibalism and romance in it, we'd love to hear about it.
There's actually something on the tip of my tongue. Actually. There is a movie. There are some movies I've watched which are about cannibalism, which I think could cover. You've got the French one, which is about a family and their cannibals. That could actually cover it. And then you've got Cannibal the Musical as well. The Trey Parker.
You just made that.
No, it's an early Trey Parker and Matt Stone comedy sort of attempt, which is not particularly good. But yeah, you've got that. I suppose you've got the zombie ones as well.
Yeah, that's true.
If they count. So yeah,
I think I want pure cannibalism.
Pure cannibalism.
No zombies allowed.
You've got Sweeney Todd. That's got romance.
Yep, that's true. But you also hate it.
I do.
That's good.
I do really hate it. So that works in its favour for you. What's it called? It's French cannibal movie called Raw. Raw, I think we could cover.
Oh yes, I heard about this. I've heard it's quite good.
It is very good. There's a little bit of romance in there.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe something for next year.
One for next year, maybe. Yeah.
One for next year. We'll get you a cannibal movie. Paddy Johnson,
Good.
fan of cannibalism.
Yeah. Fine young cannibal.
But I was going to talk about the end of this movie, wasn't I? Because I think the end of this movie is really good. Where she is being hunted by her boyfriend and then pleads with him to make love to her one more time so that she can be free as a cat. Because Malcolm McDowell
she decides she wants to live as a cat.
Yeah, because Malcolm McDowell is dead. He got a bit too cheeky as a panther and got. And so She doesn't now have a chance to go and live in an incestuous relationship with him and avoid turning into a panther. And she clearly decided, well, I'd rather be a panther and be free. But instead, she ends up as a panther in his zoo. And there's that it's very horrible scene, really, where she's there and he's stroking her as a panther in the zoo and feeding her. And it's like, I don't think this is what she wanted.
Yeah, she wanted to be free.
Yeah.
But then why is she letting him stroke her?
Yeah. So it's a very odd scene, and I think a really interesting way to end a movie like this instead of with a big shootout. Like, because when you reach the bit at the bridge near the end, so they've cornered her on the bridge as a panther, and you think, okay, this is going to be it. This is going to be the dramatic death. And then that'll be the movie over. But instead she manages to escape, and it goes on a little bit longer, and it ends in this very somber note where she's trapped in a cage permanently as a panther until she eats somebody. And it's just, it's a very odd place to end it, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and you feel like it's acknowledging that he did love her, because at one point he said, she's like, oh well, is it just about the sex? And he's like, no, I genuinely do love you, and you do believe that. So I guess from that point the romance does work, which is the most important thing for us, obviously, on this show.
Yes, yeah. And I think there is that interesting thing in this movie about the romance, isn't it? Is there's that very animal attraction between these characters. But then there also is the emotional connections as well, and it's always playing with that idea of, is it some kind of weird human panther pheromone that's making him love her, or is it genuinely a connection?
Yeah.
And I like the way that they played around with that. I think is very, very effective.
Yeah, me too. I thought that was great.
And
you know what? The music I thought was really good.
Oh,
the Bowie stuff as well, but the score, it was perfectly 80s and early 80s, and it felt a lot like Blade Runner, didn't it? And not in that it made the film sound dystopian, but it had a similar kind of vibe, but that was totally appropriate for the film and really, really helped to date it perfectly as 1982 as well, whilst also being genuinely really creepy and affecting in all the right moments. I can't say enough good things about Giorgio Moroder's scores.
Yeah, I completely agree. It works perfectly in this movie where, it does set it to its time in the 80s, but it adds this tension to the movie. Where, it's set in New Orleans. It could have been very easy for them to go down a different route with the music, but instead they've stuck to this theme. And it works really well throughout. It all feels very cohesive, and it all ties in very well to this kind of smoky tension that runs all the way through the film. So yeah, I really love it, and I think it works exceptionally well.
Yeah, definitely. His work is a bit like Vangelis, isn't it? Who did Blade Runner? There's a bit of a synergy there.
Yes,
but obviously he has the disco credentials as well. So just like, what can't he do?
He could potentially outrun a cat person.
Yeah, I reckon he could.
I choose to believe. But yes, yeah. Right. Have you got anything else you'd like to say about cat people?
No, I don't think so. No, I'd say, I agree with you that it's a shit piece, but I enjoyed it more than I was expecting to. It's very, very effective and very good, and it's definitely well worth a watch. I think it is a shame that it seems to have been a bit forgotten, really, and that it deserves, I think, to have a bit more rewatching in today's horror film canon.
Yes, yeah, I'd agree. I think it deserves to be seen by more people, I think. So yeah, do come and get on board with it and give it a go. And you'll find something very interesting, even if it's not something that you enjoy yourself. I'm going to tell you now, you have not seen anything quite like Cat People.
No, it's unique. It's certainly unique.
Yeah. So I've got a little bit of trivia for you. So by his own admission, director Paul Schrader says that one day he got so stoned on set that he refused to come out of his trailer. A whole day's filming was lost.
Meanwhile, they were like trying, obviously, to do to rig up the fake panther to do something, and it was just sitting there hanging from a rig, probably looking disgusting.
Exactly. So a little bit about the song by David Bowie. A re-recorded version of the film's song was included in Bowie's 1983 album Let's Dance. Originally, Bowie wanted to use the original film version, but MCA Records refused to license it, as Giorgio Moroder was under contract to them at the time, and they were not about to let a competing label to use a song by one of its artists. So again, that kind of boring. Ties into the bullshit around record labels stopping great art from being shared appropriately. So fuck you guys. Total bollocks. There was apparently a deleted scene when Natasha Kinski's real life mother played her half cat, half human mother. Which I wish was in it. Cool. That would have been great.
Yeah. Because there's a bit of that hint of the sort of cat people history, or that there are other cat people with the woman who comes up to her and calls her Mi Hermana in the bar. But I actually maybe wanted a bit more of that, a bit more of the tie into the kind of the history of the cat people. Because when Malcolm McDowell's telling it, you're like, I don't know if I believe you, because you're just this like weird, creepy, incest-obsessed guy. I want some more factual sources on the history of the cat people.
Yeah, you want your cat people prequel. Maybe that's what we should make in 2 years' time. Well, we better start making it now, actually, for 2 years' time.
Yeah, we've got to have it ready.
And then final bit of trivia for you. The UK press mistakenly reported that John Hurt would be starring in this, having mistaken him for John Hurd.
Oh no.
Ironically, John Hurt was refused entry into South Africa in 1978 when officials mistook him for John Hurd, who is a very strong opponent of apartheid.
Oh, interesting.
John Hurd also, he almost turned down the role because he believed it was a porno.
It certainly sounds like it.
It does. So that's a little bit of trivia for you.
I just realised John Hurd's dead.
Yeah, it was a few years ago. It's very sad.
Huh.
At least he's left behind some really good performances, though, over the years, I suppose. He lived long in the memory.
Yeah, for sure.
And now
this is one of them.
Yeah,
definitely.
Now you've added cat people to your memories of John Hurd.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, so
very good.
So how are we going to rank this?
Ooh, let's see. How many days can you keep a panther in a cage in your zoo before it needs to get out and kill someone so it can become human again?
So I've got a pretty well behaved cat person in my zoo, because it's 14 days. It can last a full 2 weeks in captivity before it needs to get out.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty good.
Yeah.
I could go even one higher. I could go 15.
Oh, excellent. You've got
There's 3/4 of the way there. This film, I really did quite enjoy it. I think just because I was so pleasantly surprised by it. But no, it was good.
You've got an excellently behaved cat person, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's one of those movies where it's a real litmus test of whether you're a true bro or a beta cuck. Is whether you enjoy cat people. And you've passed the test of weird 80s horror movies, so I'm glad.
Yeah. Ever been cucked by a panther?
Have you ever been cucked by Malcolm McDowell as a panther?
Thankfully, no.
Right, so we've got...
There's still 2 weeks to go, aren't there? It's great about the way this Halloween falls.
Oh, God, you're right.
So maybe we do have room. I was just looking at the calendar to check, but technically we do have 2 more. We don't have to. I mean, it's up to you.
Hell yeah, we're watching an additional one. I'll come up with an additional one. So do you want to leave what was going to be our final movie to the final movie, or do you want to crack on with it now?
Is it also a shit piece?
It is.
Okay. Oh, well, if you have another one to slot in that you can just pull out of thin air, then let's do that. But if not, if you want time to think about it, then let's do the one you had planned.
No, I do. I've actually got it right here. And it's another erotic horror movie from the 80s that also has David Bowie involved.
Okay.
So
It's the snowman, obviously.
yeah, exactly. No, we're going to be watching The Hunger, a vampire movie with David Bowie in it.
So he's actually in it?
He's actually in it, yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, I've never seen it.
Oh, good stuff. Right, yeah. Well,
We haven't done a vampire film yet this year, have we?
No, we haven't. So this is a chance for us
We do usually manage to slot one in, don't we?
We do, because they are the sexiest of monsters, so they fit in quite well with our podcast.
This is true. Apart from Wolf Boys.
Apart from, Wolf Boys are obviously our number ones.
Wolf Boys for life.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, okay, cool. So yeah,
Panther Boys
we'll
for
watch
life.
we'll watch The Hunger, and then we'll leave our shit piece to the final episode of this Halloween season.
Excellent. Very good. I'm excited about that.
Excellent stuff.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in. We really, really appreciate it, and we hope you're enjoying going on this Halloween journey with us. I think it's been one of our more interesting selections of films, actually, and I'm enjoying it a lot.
Oh, good stuff. I'm really, really pleased. Yeah, we've gone in some experimental places this Halloween.
Yeah, it's good. So, yeah, thanks a lot for listening in. We really, really appreciate it. If you like what we do, you can give us money. There's a link in our show notes to where you can just basically give us a tip. Just think of it like a tip jar. We're not asking you to subscribe to anything or whatever. We're just saying if you like what we do, throw some coins in the jar. And you can find us on Twitter at Big Boys Don't Pod, on the emails bigboysdon'tcrypodcast@gmail.com. If you want to make any requests or, tell us about panthers, why not?
Yeah, what's your favourite panther? If you could turn into any kind of erotically charged animal, what would it be?
Yeah. Well, what I actually want to know is what's the difference between a panther and a puma. If someone can tell us that, that'd be appreciated.
I can tell you this. Because pumas are cougars, aren't they?
That's introducing a different cat into the mix. How does that help me?
But you know what a cougar is. Cougars are the sort of mountain lion cats of America.
Right, yeah.
That's what a puma is. Whereas a panther is bigger. So they are different.
So the Surrey puma came over from America.
Yeah, the Surrey puma is small. It's a cougar. Whereas if it was a Surrey panther, it would be bigger.
So panthers are big boys?
Yeah.
Right. So it's a question of scale.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Well, you learn something new every day. There's your fact of the day, my friends.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for that. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll be back next week to talk about The Hunger.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
That's my vampire noise.
I loved it.
It's a bit like Christopher Walken in Sleepy Hollow, but that's more of a...
Exactly, yeah.
I can't make a panther noise.
That's good. Was that a good panther?
That's quite good. Yeah.
Oh, I'm made to be a panther.
Good. Are you still recording? Because I want to put that on there.
I am. Yeah, I'm still recording.
Cool. Let's just cut it with you. Yeah, end with you making a panther noise.
Excellent.
Everybody wants to be a cat, because a cat's the only cat who knows where it's at.
Tell me, everybody's picking up on that feline.